2 or 3 years ago, before I started biohacking, I thought PMSing was normal. I like to think that I am a biohacker 80% of the time and a bioslacker 20% of the time. I think it's such a good balance. When you say, I want to become the best version of yourself, are you willing to pay the price? As long as you care about what other people think, you're a prisoner of your own life.
Nothing's going to make you as much money or give you as much purpose in life as when you are doing something that's in full alignment with you.
There's a reason why it says it takes a village. Like, you really need to live in a village of your friends and family and just, be supported. You can't do it alone. I think it's really hard when you live in the same apartment doing the same thing for 10 years and all of a sudden you're like, I want to make a change, because everything around you is set up for you to continue being the person that you are. Your birthright and your default should be thriving. A lot of energy. If it's not, time to fix it.
And welcome back, and welcome to my first podcast in LA, and I'm excited for this one. This one's going to be an absolute banger because I've got the lady herself, Aggie Lau, mindset coach, biohacker. Welcome to the show, and welcome to your beautiful apartment in Hollywood.
Thank you so much for hosting me. Thank you so much for coming to my apartment. I'm about to leave to Europe in about 2 hours. So
yeah,
I'm going to come to yours. I'm like, perfect.
I think we should start with how we met, because it's a pretty random story, because I crashed your engagement party.
You did. And it's funny because we were very selective about who we're inviting to the party. But then one of our closest friends, Lucas, basically reached out and said, like, hey, there are two amazing people I would love for you to meet. And I'm like, actually, let them come. And we immediately vibed and we had a quick chat.
And here we are.
Yeah.
And here we are. Well, obviously you've had one hell of a journey with everything you've been doing, obviously Dancing with the Stars and all this kind of stuff that you've done, being a travel influencer and all that stuff, all that razzmatazz. But I really want to dive deep in today into some parts of your journey, and obviously where you started and how you transformed yourself, but also into like the mindset and the biohacking, and really go deep into that, because I think you can help a lot of, especially like a lot of the women that listen to this as well. You can help a lot of them get their mind right, understand their biology, I think, a lot better.
100%. It's one of the things that get me really, really annoyed, that we as women are not taught an instruction manual for our bodies. Like, we go to school and no one ever helps us understand our hormones or how to live according to our cycle, or what different signs, I'm not going to call them symptoms, but different signs mean, and how we can help ourselves navigate through the journey of life and make the most of our bodies.
And the reason I'm glad you're talking about this today specifically is because it affects men more than you could ever know. Like, because
probably even more so, but guys are like even more embarrassed to talk about it.
No, but I mean, it also affects men from the point of view is like, if you're trying to have a relationship with a woman, you're trying to deal with all this stuff, and unless you can understand the kind of stuff that they're going through and what you're kind of going through, and at different times that you go through it on a bio level, unless you can understand it, you can't be empathetic towards the other person.
100%. And the funny thing is, up until 2 or 3 years ago, before I started biohacking, I thought PMSing was normal, that the mood swings are normal. And, kind of like being a guy, I was like, oh, damn it, this is this time of the month. It's better to avoid your girlfriend. But when you understand that if we actually ate and lived and fasted according to our cycle, we wouldn't have mood swings. We wouldn't have the PMS and, feeling like we want to like sit on a couch and just die, literally. And the guys wouldn't really need an instruction manual. The only instruction manual that you would need is how to approach your woman, because yes, we crave either intimacy or sex, depending on our hormones. And that would involve a different approach to lovemaking. But when it comes to actual mood, there shouldn't be any mood swings involved.
So you're saying on this podcast that there's a woman should not have mood swings, and she can effectively disengage from having these mood swings if she understood her biology to the full level of understanding.
100%. Yeah. So as you go, there's so many hormones in our body over 50. The main sex hormones that we like to think of when we talk about hormones are, estrogen, progesterone, right? Like, these are the two main ones. And so when our estrogen is peaking at the beginning of our cycle, we are way more motivated, way more go-getters. This is the time for us to shine, to get shit done, to go out there. And then towards the second part of our cycle, progesterone is peaking, and that's basically the time for us to go more inward and it's time for us to focus on being instead of doing, but it doesn't, but if progesterone is out of whack, you're going to feel like you want to kill your boyfriend, and you're going to feel like you want to have a bag of chips, and you feel like your body, like the emotions are running for you and you have no control.
So how did you go on this journey of finding all this out? Because I really want to take it back a step and just understand you coming across all this, because obviously like this has been an evolving journey for you. And when I was doing my research, I thought, here's a woman that's been through so much in terms of like so many evolutions of self to get to where you are right now, to even be able to even be able to articulate what you're articulating on this podcast. You have to have gone through a lot of chapters. So where would be where would be like the best place for us to start with this? Obviously would probably be, you know, obviously you come from Poland and you emigrated to the US, right?
I emigrated to Australia for...
Oh, you emigrated to Australia first?
Yeah,
and then
for 6 years.
And then there was kind of like a relationship there that was kind of like where you first started to understand a little bit of like toxic energy kind of thing.
I didn't even realize at the time, but it was definitely not very helpful. I had a very attractive partner. He was Australian. And so... the theme was, okay, he's the good-looking one. He kind of made me feel like, you know, oh, you're a little chubby, or you're not looking very good, or like your nose is very big. And I didn't have enough self-confidence to break up with him, I guess.
Really? So you felt in that moment that you weren't like good-looking at all, like in any aspect of your life. You felt like he was the good-looking one in the relationship, and that you had to bow down to him.
And I was the funny one.
Really? Right.
Yeah. And so then we broke up. I moved to the US, and, you know, you moved to LA, and back 10 years ago, everyone was vegan. So I decided to try the vegan diet, and, you know, I lost some weight. I felt great at the beginning. The first 6 months were great, but then the energy crashes showed up, and I kind of felt like not at my best. So I was trying to figure out different things, you know, going on a juice cleanse or raw vegan diet, whatever it might be. And it took about 8 years for me to basically crash. Like, I put on weight that I couldn't like get rid of. My skin was just absolutely horrible. I looked like a 13-year-old girl with like so much acne. Like, my skin was just sore. My hair was falling out. I had my hair falling out in patches. I had like bald patches all over my hair. Constantly bloated. I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. And I was like, I don't believe that's what it's meant to be. I believe like my birthright is to thrive, to wake up in the morning, to feel great. And I need to find out like what's the solution. So I started looking everywhere and came across Dave Asprey, the founder of biohacking. And he was also raw vegan. And he shared his story of how introducing meat back into your diet and actually eating fat might be good for you, and da-da-da. And I was like, okay, I would do anything but not eat meat, you know. I was like, my vegan ego was very big, and I was like, you know, I'm a better person than this, you know. But after another couple of years of really, really struggling, I was like, you know what, this is, I have to just make a change. And so I started introducing all of these biohacks into my life, and now I feel so much better. So great understatement, actually.
it's interesting you talk about the breakdown, how your body started to feel like it was breaking down after 6 months of veganism, because I've read studies that say that, you know, you know, in the initial stages of like being a vegan, you see great things happen to your body and things start to look good. You've removed it for a period. You've removed the meat. It's for a period of time. Your body starts to look well, and then it starts to really dramatically reverse, and you start to get what they term as like skinny fat type look, where you're looking like. That
was me.
Is that kind of what you experienced?
100%. And I think it's really confusing because originally, you know, once you first get into veganism, you actually remove a lot of processed foods. And so yes, of course you're going to feel better, right? Because you start to pay attention to what you eat. But then you really what I didn't understand, that my diet wasn't nutrient dense and I didn't have enough nutrients in my body. And it's almost like your body's constantly rebuilding itself. Even you watching this podcast, like there's like millions of cells that have just died since I started saying this sentence and will die by the end of the show. And the new ones are being reborn. And so you're constantly just like moving. Imagine like you're building a castle that just like every day it gets reborn. But if you don't have the right building blocks, if you don't have enough tools to build a castle, that foundation is getting weaker and weaker as we speak. And so, you know, there are studies that believe that, you know, you can only go 3 generations on a deficient diet before a species gets extinct because you get infertile. And we see that infertility is becoming a bigger issue. Like, I asked my mom, I was like, back in, you know, in the 80s or 70s, no one was really struggling with infertility. It was like one woman out of her friends group. And for me right now, I don't think there's a one girlfriend that didn't have hormonal issues that I know of.
Did you notice any hormonal changes when you went onto the vegan diet, in terms of, like, were you more erratic because you weren't getting the nutrients that your body needed?
I think I didn't even understand the impact of hormones and whether what I'm experiencing is a hormone imbalance or not. For example, I didn't realize there's two hormones, leptin and ghrelin. One is one that is making you feel full, and the other one's making you feel like you're hungry. And so they get disrupted as well, right? These are also hormones. Glucose is a hormone. You know, if glucose is out of whack, you're going to crave more sweets, right? So there's so many smaller hormones that we don't usually know about, that once they get disrupted, you will. I had that I don't know if you ever had that as well, that sometimes you eat and you can't really feel full. And I think that was what I had at veganism. I would just eat and I would open the fridge and I was like constantly looking. I was like never fully satiated.
I think in my life, what I've understood is there's been many different chapters where I've had different diets and different sports in my life and stuff like that, and I've kind of come to the understanding now that I need to lift some weights, but I need to have some boxing in there because boxing is good for my overall health, and my testosterone levels benefit from me boxing for some reason compared to lifting weights, and also like just how I eat as well. If I'm eating cleaner, obviously, in essence, I feel a hell of a lot better. But even to the point of, like, even if you're having like 2 or 3 meals out a week, I feel lesser of myself, and I can start to feel things I don't like to feel and feel stodgy.
Yeah. So, that's a great word. I like to think that I am a biohacker 80% of the time and a bioslacker 20% of the time. I think it's such a good balance. I love going out, and I think, yes, maybe the food you eat going out, I mean, not maybe, definitely it's not as good if you make it at home, made with love, you know, without the seed oils, without, you know, just so many things that they put in the restaurants that are not so great, like MSG. But it's the pleasure of going out. And we now know that if, you know, the pleasure of eating a good meal with your friends, that almost like it cancels out not so great meal, right? Because it's like the other part, like the psychological aspect of it. It's like, it feels good, you know?
Your humans need that place where they can come together and they can have that community. We were talking about, before this podcast, we were talking about LA, and in my first couple of days in LA, I was like, I don't know whether I could be in LA all the time, or I don't know whether I could live here. And then after obviously I get invited to your engagement party, and I met loads of people there, and I went to another event the night before, and I met loads of people there.
I'm sorry, I was like, never a helicopter, and here we are.
Yeah. And before this podcast, we were saying, like, you know, should we have the door open while we do the podcast, because there's never any noise, and then straight away we've got a chopper flying over.
Yeah, but that's very LA, actually, speaking of LA. But you get great community and chopper, always.
But it's definitely, in terms of my experience in LA, like I said, the first 3 days, I was like, you know, is this the vibe? And then once you get integrated into that community feel, it starts to feel like, this place has got so many opportunities for you. And I didn't realize that, because I was fully sold on moving full time to Dubai before I came to LA. And then I was like, and now I'm challenging my thought process, because I just think there's so many opportunities here.
I just gave up my residency from Dubai.
Really?
Yeah, just a couple of months ago, because I felt the same way. I skydive, the best skydiving's in Dubai, so we're thinking that would be such a great place for us to be. And then I realized the community is one thing I don't think we still understand in today's society. I think it was very much the norm back 100 years ago, and we're still like living in those big homes by ourselves, you know, away from our parents and away from our grandparents, and we put old people into old people's homes. Like, that's not how it's supposed to be. You know, I believe that, you know, if you have your family close by And if you have your friends close by and you live in a community, you like bring your children, like there is a reason why it says it takes a village. Like you really need to live in a village of your friends and family, and just like, you know, be supported. You can't do it alone.
See, and one thing about Dubai is obviously like a lot of the benefits of being in Dubai is like the tax regulations, and obviously like, you know,
so central. Like, let's be honest.
It's great for travel. It's central. Quite a few business people have told me, look, Frankie, if you can earn X amount, but you can keep 20-30% more, you know, look how that compounds over time, and then you can enter the US later on in life, and it's like it's a little bit better for you. And I understand that concept too, and it's probably something similar that I'll do. But I just think that there's a reason why these high tax locations like California, for argument's sake, they do have the tax that you're paying. I don't see it as just tax anymore. I see it as like a tax for the opportunities that you can create here.
Oh, 100%. I see it so much, like more and more now. Like I think just everything I have created in the last year has been a result of my extremely helpful, wonderful, talented friends, that when I said, hey guys, I feel called to do supplements, my audience really needs something that would be like specifically designed for women, that would be natural, doctor formulated, whatnot. And I just said that, you know, at a party. And within a week, you know, my friends were like, hey, these are the best guys we've asked around. You know, this celebrity works with them, that person works with them. I was like, this isn't something that I could ever potentially get being in Dubai or being in Bali, where I live half of the time, because, you know, Google search only goes this far, right? And I think there is beauty in the community. And, you know, they say you're an average of 5 people you hang out with. And I truly believe it's not even about like someone giving you a contact for a supplement company. It's the mindset. Like, I love my mom dearly and I love my family, but for them, anything that I say is a challenge. You know, I'm about to go get my wedding dress. I'm like, Mom, will you go to London with me? Let's go to London, like to go shopping, because I was shopping here. Mom's in Poland. I'm like, let's go to like the best, or just to see. She's like, no, you know, it's a Tuesday, I'm busy. You know, like there's always something.
Yeah, but European mentality, isn't it?
Yeah, and then you come to LA and anything is possible. And people are like, fuck yeah, why not? Right? And in Europe, you have to give people 20 reasons why they should do something. In LA, you have to give people a reason why not, right?
Yeah. When you first moved out of Poland and went to Australia, because obviously I went from England to Australia, that was my first move.
Oh,
and I did the 8.5 years there. I found Australia was great for me because it expanded my mind beyond all levels of conception. Because when you live in Europe, it's like small houses, small mindset, kind of a middle-class mentality. I've found the area that I grew up in, certainly. And it just kind of, when I went to Australia, I just literally, the first day, I was like, wow, like, I can't even conceptualize how much can be achieved now in the world when I've seen this level of abundance there. Was it similar for you?
It was also like, I found Australia to be, I don't know if I should say that, but I found like the environment that I was in, right? It's obviously not the whole country, but it was a little bit materialistic in that way. Like it was so abundant that it, for me, lacked a little bit of depth. Like it's almost like people grew up with so much ease that there was not enough like grid of them.
It's funny.
And so I like that in America, it's like I wouldn't say hustle, but just like appreciation for hard work, and people really just like go after their dreams. In Australia, I felt like it was a little bit of like a passive, as long as I'm getting paid and, you know, go home 3 hours early on a Friday, I'm good.
I went down a boxing gym when I went to the Gold Coast for the first time, and I was just hitting the bag. And you know how sometimes in a boxing gym there's a lot of ego.
I've only been once. I'm sorry, it's so hard for your abs. I was like, I can't do it.
But there's a bit of ego in a boxing gym, right? And I was fresh off the plane. I just landed from England. I'd only been there a few weeks. I was still a little bit even jet lagged to say. And I remember because you know how there's the Australian lad. He's this good looking lad. He looked good in a pair of gloves. You know what I mean? He was moving around. He's like, oh, do you want to spar? And when we got into round one, we're going through round one, and I'm just playing around, just parrying out my jab and this, that, and the other. You can imagine. After a minute, I realised, holy fuck! Like, I'm going in here thinking to myself, like, this is life or death, like, because that's how I was taught in England, like, because everything's like grit, determination, like one of us is going to die, one of us is going to come out laid on a stretcher, and this kid don't want to know none of that, like. So he's called me out into this sparring session, but like I just knew then it was like, this country it's a lot easier to grow up here than back in England, and I could even tell it from the sparring that I had to ease off the gas, because otherwise I could have blown him out there.
You could actually just hurt him.
Yeah, like because it's just a different environment. And then I realised when I got out the ring and I'm sat on the side of the canvas and I'm looking at other people sparring, I realised, they're doing boxing for fun. In England, we're training for this because we want to be relentless. We want to kill each other. Like, not in when it's out of the ring, it's respectful, but before that, it's not. And that was a whole mentality shift for me of like that's how I see Australia. Australia's like very nice, very beautiful, very laid back, very affluent, and money has flowed easy in that country to everybody, I feel. But then when I come to England, like the entrepreneurs that I interview in England, they've had to come from like the council estate on the back end of somewhere else, like, and really drag themselves out the mud to get the 5 million, 10 million company and then take it to the stock exchange. And that's kind of how I felt my experience was in Australia. Yeah. It's just a weird one. But so you, after being in Australia for like 6 years, you then pivoted and moved straight to LA.
I went sailing for a year across the Pacific.
I read about this because you nearly die from a side wave, like, because you got washed over. Didn't you get the whole boat? So you decided to. My understanding of this story is you decided with your boyfriend at the time that you were going to buy a boat without a sat nav navigation system in it and sail it right across the ocean. So walk me through that story.
So I was 25 and I was like, okay, I'm having a bit of a quarter life crisis. I would love to experience real adventure. I felt like I live in the city and I'm becoming more of a city rat where I get uncomfortable when out in nature, and I want to change that. I want to see what it's like to be truly like living an adventure. And we thought, why not sailing? The little caveat was neither of us have ever sailed before. I've never even been on a sailboat in my life. But it just looked like something that people do when they want to experience adventure. And I was like, either this or climbing like a really big mountain. But mountains like a few weeks, and we kind of wanted to do something for a year. And Pacific is, just so you know, I didn't know, back in the day, it's actually 1/3 of the planet, even though you never see it because it's on the side of the map, so it doesn't look like it's big. But it's actually 1/3 of the planet. It's just the Pacific Ocean. And all of us, are living on the 2/3. And
so you just randomly decide that you want to sail across that?
Yeah, so we found a boat on eBay from Mexico for like $10,000. Was like 30, 40 years old, and just went to Mexico, tried to like make sure that it's okay. We asked a couple people like, do you think we can survive in this? And everyone was like, I mean, I don't know, right? It's like a boat from 1970, super small, but we decided to go for it. And the first part of the journey, imagine, like, I'm calling my mom. It's like, Mom, we're going to be following this other sailboat, because she would have a heart attack if she heard that, I'm sailing without any experience on my own. So it's like, we'll be following this other sailboat. I'll be, we're going to arrive on the next island within 2 to 3 weeks. And, 3 weeks pass, 4 weeks pass, 6 weeks pass. My mom's like, okay, they're dead. Like, they ask everybody, they call the embassy, and the embassy like, well, if she's lost at sea, there's nothing we can do. It's like 7 weeks, right? So we left end of September, and we were supposed to arrive like late October. It was like October,
so you
November.
Had no communication at all?
No automatic pilot, so I had to like hand steer the entire time for basically 60 days. So we arrived on the first island, Nukuhiva, 62 days later. I think it's like a world record for the slowest time between the two islands, because we obviously didn't know what we were doing, and we were sailing in the cyclone season, and there was like really bad weather. So my mom was like, I cannot believe like you're still gonna go. And we continued for a whole year.
And was that one of the points in your life where you really challenged your own mindset and challenged your own thinking patterns to kind of step out of? I kind of feel like at that point you wanted to step out of the norm.
I think that was what my soul, like my higher self, really craved, like to show me what's possible, to show me that if I surrender and trust, there's so much beauty. It was the hardest but the most beautiful year of my life. Imagine, you spend 180 days out in the ocean. You imagine the sunrises, the dolphins every morning coming to say hello. Like, this is just something that it's almost impossible to share, right? Like the rhythm that you have when you just do one thing a day.
What would you say to the people listening to this that may feel that in some parts of their life they're stuck, they want to change it up, they want to challenge, they want to get more in contact with their higher self, their highest version of themselves? What would you say?
I think the easiest one, and that's why I was a travel influencer in the first place, because you have to change your environment. I think it's really hard when you like live in the same apartment doing the same thing for 10 years, and all of a sudden you're like, I want to make a change, because everything around you is set up for you to continue being the person that you are, unfortunately, right? It's the routine, the people. It's going to be really, really hard for you to make that change. Second, when you say, I want to become the best version of yourself, are you willing to pay the price? That's a really big one, because most people say that, but are you really willing? Are you willing to give up some of your friendships that no longer serve you?
Yeah.
Are you willing to give up your relationship? Are you willing to give up the foods, the habits, Instagram, whatever it might be that does not serve your higher self? Most people can't. Most people are so worried, and that's another thing you have to give up. What do people think about you, right? Are you ready to give that up as well? Because I'm still, like, we still are, most people still are, like, victims to what do people care about? What do people say? What do people think? For me, it's not as much about strangers, but it's some of my friends that I really care about, or people that I look up to, that I still would love to impress. And as I go through my spiritual coach, we like uncover, I'm like, who do I really still like to like secretly impress? Is it Jacob? Is it, someone that I just met that I look up to and I want to like appear smart or whatever it might be? But it's a beautiful way to heal. If you can give that up, you're unstoppable,
So essentially then it's giving up what other people think is the kind of, because it's what other people think that will stop you from doing the traveling, from changing your location, from changing jobs, from changing your life in any aspect, will be other people's opinions. So how did you manage to break what other people's opinions meant to you?
Lots of things. I think it's still a process. It's not like I can tell you I really don't give a shit. I would love to say that. There is definitely a level of that, because it comes up when, a dear friend of mine just brings something up that is really hurtful, or I find out that they said something about me that isn't quite true. Like, it still hurts. But when it comes to like in a larger scale, in terms of my followers, it's just like really trying to heal that no matter what the people say, the good and the bad, neither of this is true. And that's a lot of ayahuasca. It's a lot of just like working with my spiritual coach she crushes my ego every single time. And she's like, as long as you care about what other people think, you're a prisoner of your own life. And so everything I do is just like...
That's a powerful statement you just said there.
Yeah.
If you care what other people think, you're a prisoner of your own life.
Yeah, because everything you do is a reaction to what you think other people think of you, right? You don't live out of the fullest expression, out of the full, like, fuck yes. You live from what is it going to look like to other people. And, and whenever you have a big audience, it multiplies, right? So it's not only your friends and family and people at work, it's also, 1 million to 2 million people online.
When I first started doing this podcast, I was just doing it one rep at a time, and then I got into like 60, 70 episodes, and I started to get into this competition mindset where I was competing with other podcasters. And it wasn't until about episode 85 I sat down with myself and I said to myself, do you know what? This has got to go back to one rep at a time, and you've just got to go back to being fully present and enjoying the conversations you're having in the time that you're in, doing the best that you can with what you've got. Because
that one rep at a time.
One rep at a time, because
that's a tattoo right there.
Because otherwise you are in this constant cycle. I first and foremost, when it comes to doing a podcast, even, and when it comes to doing anything in life, Aggie, it has to be for you first and foremost. So this serves my sole purpose in terms of, like, I get to have conversations with people that I want to really have conversations with, and then hopefully, as a byproduct of me doing that and living authentically through that, then it gets to touch other people as a second point. But sometimes I get people say, "Oh, I want you to have this person on the podcast. I want you to do this. I want you to do that." But I only have people on that I want to have on because it's got to serve you first. And then by
it's funny that you say that, because I've gone through the same thing. So I really appreciate that you're sharing that.
Yeah, because if you have to serve you first in order to be able to serve the world. You cannot serve the world.
Mic drop.
You cannot.
Mics don't drop, damn it.
Yeah, but you can't serve the world unless you first served yourself. So it's just
fill your own cup first.
Fill your own cup first, and make sure that you're, ask yourself, just, you might be driving to work right now. I don't know where you are in the world right now, but just say to yourself, is everything that I'm doing, is that for me or is it for other people? Because I know that there's been times in my life, especially when I was a boxing trainer or when I was involved in boxing at all, that was all to do with ego and all to do with me being something for other people. It wasn't truly for me. And it's hard to say it, but it's the truth. And the truth that you find in yourself is the hardest truth to face up to. Yeah. There's nothing outside of us that really truly affects us other than our internal dialogue with the outside world.
100%. And one of the very first people I looked up to was Oprah. Not very original, but that was 15 years ago. And I remember she said that her favorite book is The Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukav. And the gist of it is that the energy behind every action changes the outcome. And she's like, just remember that. And I remember not quite understanding what she meant, but I think it's very true. You can do your podcast from the energy of I just want the most downloads and I'm going to get super competitive. Wait, someone had Aggie, I'm going to get her too, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't work like that, does it?
No, but if you do it I haven't seen Aggie on a lot of podcasts, but I resonate with her energy. Fuck, maybe she should come, because I'm curious about her story. And then that's how you, make yourself unique, two very different energies, right?
So, picture the scene. I want to tell you a bit more of a story about how.
My eyes, actually.
So, picture the scene, right? So, I've come to LA. I've been in LA 3 or 4 days. Mm-hmm. Lucas says to me, I want you to come to meet my friends. They're having their engagement party. Now, I'm naturally thinking to myself, am I going to be welcome in this environment? I don't want to make a woman especially feel like her party's been invaded on her engagement day. So this is what I'm thinking at the time. Mm-hmm. When I turned up to your engagement party, I was thinking to myself, obviously I'm a good judge of people, because obviously when you're stood face to face with a guy in a boxing ring, you get to look into each other's souls, and if you know a lot about each other just by being in that kind of environment. So when I arrived in Beverly Hills at your place that you had then, I was in, and you were so warm and endearing to me and welcoming to me. I was like, oh, and then we started to talk, and we realised we had a lot of commonalities, and it was just very nice for me. And not everyone's like that. So that was a way that obviously this podcast came about, which is a more organic and more beautiful way of doing podcasts than just being reaching out to people random people by email and do you know what I mean, before you've even met them and stuff like that. So that's why I obviously invited you on. I thought you could bring a lot of value to the audience, because I knew that the online perception I had of you before I met you and the perception I had was the same thing.
Oh, that means so much.
Do you know what I'm saying? Because sometimes I've met people. I've already met people in LA that I've seen their content online that are not the same person.
Yep, I know. It makes it really hard for me at least, to keep a lot of my friendships, because it's that you love someone, you love following them online, you meet them in person, and it's just wow, how jarring.
Yeah, because especially, but I've learned from those interactions the only reason they have that perception is because I've given them that perception without meeting them in my mind. So I've created the perception of the person. So actually I'm in the wrong. So even if when I sit here and I say I've met people and they're not how I expected them to be, that is my fault, not their fault, because they've just been their authentic self in that moment and the moments they're online potentially. But I've assigned that if I see them doing this over here, that they're like that all the time, and that's not really fair on my part. So that's kind of a judgment on my part. So I'm trying to get better at that. So I'm trying not to have the pre-expectations of people before I meet them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like even that was an educational point for me. It's like, oh, that's a learning moment. Maybe I shouldn't do that, because then you're not ever disappointed with people. Have you ever got to the point in your life where you meet someone or you have a few interactions with someone and you're disappointed with them? Yeah. But that disappointment is your fault, because you assigned them to be a certain way, right? Yeah. One thing I've realized as a man is when you take responsibility for everything that happens in your life, you free yourself, and it allows you to unlock another spiritual level to yourself that you weren't even conscious of, because now you're like, oh, I own all this. Like, this is all me. This is all like that. I had that animosity over there with him because of my ego. I didn't like him because something about his life triggers my past. It all refers inwards, right?
So funny. So I just got off brain training 2 days ago.
Off what training?
Brain training. So there's this brain training called 40 Years of Zen. It's almost $20,000, 5 days in Seattle. You train your brain. And so I got there, and the first thing we do is, okay, we're going to like learn how to forgive people and forgive yourself. And I was like, wait, you're training so much to forgive people? Like, I need all the tech. Like, what's going on? And so they close out, they put you in this like sensory deprivation pods for 4 or 5 hours at a time. And you just sit there forgiving people. And for the first 3 days, I was like, wow, like, am I just really going to sit here and forgive people? I have not much to forgive. I always, unfortunately, go to the, like, over-intellectualizing my experience and thinking, like, I know what you did, why you did it, I see the end goal. But, just like my spiritual teacher says, you have to feel it to heal it. The science said you have to feel it to heal it. So I was trying to get really, really angry, and I wish I could show you the brainwaves, but starting between Monday and Friday, and how much forgiveness, and especially self-forgiveness, grows your brain is unbelievable.
It's funny that you talk about how the brainwave pattern changed, because I haven't been to the brain training that you have, but I have been to Dr. Joe Dispenza's retreat.
Oh, amazing! So you would know,
right? And the only way I can explain it to the audience is the fact of like, you think you have a problem with this thing over here, and when you go into like any meditation or any brain training like you went through, you find out your problem isn't over here like you thought it was. It's something over here, or something over here, or something down here.
Usually here, it's your ego feeling like there is the biggest like root cause. And let me just correct you, but like anything that you ever got upset, anything you had to forgive other people or yourself, it's that the reality was not what you hoped it to be. So it's you resisting reality. And every time you resist reality, it's your ego. Your higher self is like, everything is perfect. Everything is happening to me, for a reason. And everything is a gift. That's basically it. That's your higher self, knowing that everything is perfect. And you don't ever resist reality. You just let it be. And it's your mindset to it is what you get control over. But your ego has this perfect image and a perfect movie of what your podcast should be, of what your life should be, of who you should be dating, and what they should look like, and how many kids you're going to have, and how cool your house is. And if it's not that, you're constantly disappointed and you feel shit about yourself. I'm like, guess what? Like, what if you just change your mindset, right?
And if you can understand anything, understand this. Your vision of your perfect reality is nothing compared to the actual reality that you could live that could be way beyond that. So by you having a perception of what your perfect reality is, yes, you actually keep yourself away from even more abundance than what you could actually have. Yeah. So you actually need to have, I'd love these things to happen in my life, and have that vision for yourself. But then it's also about but there could be more, and I'm happy, and I'm open to there being more, and I'm open into that happening in a different way. I'll give you an example. I was meant to go to Australia to do my mastermind out in Australia, and one of my speakers cancelled. Like literally, like I was meant to be going out there in literally leaving on like next Sunday or the Sunday after, and one of my speakers cancelled, and it's like it's folded my whole event, and I'm having to refund people, and I'm having to do all that, and I'm lost money because obviously of all this stuff that I've set up, and I booked this stuff. So of course I'm feeling like, why is this happening to me? Right? This is how I'm thinking at the time. And I sat there and I thought to myself, but hang on a minute. The abundance it gives me opportunity to stay in LA longer. I've got another month on my visa. I can stay in LA longer. I can do more podcasts. It's going to open up more doors. I'm just starting to meet more people. So obviously, like, whether you believe in God, universe, whatever, like, obviously the world right now doesn't want me to go to Australia. It wants me to stay in LA for some reason. So, like, just roll into that and see that for what it is.
They're using that speaker, as a means for you to stay in LA, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you will never do it. I also canceled my trip coming up next week because I was like, I really need to have that more time in Europe before going to Bali. And it's so funny how, like, when you change your mindset and you realize that, yeah, like, these things are happening for you,
not to you. Yeah,
not to you. It's incredible, but also really scary.
It's a lot. You have to overcome a lot to go through the gears, to go through the levels. I think where I've gone wrong, and where some of you who listen to this may be going wrong, I don't know, because I'm not you, but maybe you're looking. Well, I was certainly looking at things so like I had to achieve. I have to start here and achieve this, and it had to be a straight line. Whereas life's not really. Life
is not a straight line.
Life isn't this straight line. Like any podcast that I do in the 3 weeks after this week are completely unexpected on my journey because I wasn't even meant to be here. Mm-hmm. So that's a beautiful thing to be able to lean into, because it's like, okay, what could happen? There's something bigger for me here, because obviously I'm not going to Australia now, and there's a reason why certain things fall over. There's always been a reason. Like many things in my life that I've predetermined as bad in that moment have turned out very, very unspeakably good for me. Like, and I'm sure that is for many of us, but we have this romantic attachment with putting feeling around things that we should be nonplussed about. We wrap this feeling into something and be like, because this has happened, or because this is taken away, I have to feel angry about it. And I sat in anger for about, not anger, but like frustration, which is a low vibrational field to sit in, for about an hour, until I snapped myself out of it with a bit of breath work and a little bit of a reframing of what I'm doing. And it's like, how many things in your life right now do you need to reframe the way you look at? That's a great question to ponder today. It's like, how many things should I reframe? Because I'm thinking something that's not actually supporting where I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, and I think it's like so many things that you mentioned, stepping out of the victim mentality, right? Which is like, poor me, why is this happening for me? Second, always finding the gift of every situation. And even when I share that, I teach these. My very first course I got into, before I did biohacking, I did more like mindset and helping people stepping into the abundance and manifesting a lot of money. And I just realized that most people don't appreciate the things they already have, right? Like, we're in this apartment here in LA, and they usually go just like, oh, it's not a house in the hills, right? So it's like we can't really like appreciate every single bit of having an apartment, of like, actually it's so convenient, I don't have to worry about the garden, it's actually beautiful, and then I feel safer, and then perhaps X, Y, and Z, and all the perks that when I'm here I'm gonna be enjoying every single bit about this apartment. And instead of thinking, oh, it's not a house in the hills, right? Instead of, because the old me would be like, yo, bro, like, you have an apartment, that's amazing, you're not homeless, it's your own.
But young Aggie growing up in Poland, this would have been her dream.
Yeah,
that's what a lot of us got to understand, that a lot of us are living our dreams that were our dreams 5 years ago.
Exactly. So can you imagine the younger you're like, damn it, I have to stay in LA and do more podcasts with epic people. That sounds miserable.
Yeah.
Right?
I know, and it's just like you have to.
That's your plan B.
You have to challenge your thinking. It's like, I get to travel around the world. I've got online business that generates revenue. I travel around the world. I film content with only people that I want to talk to. And yeah, of course, like, would I like to have another 100,000 listeners a week? on listening to the podcast? Absolutely, of course I would. But that will happen when it's meant to happen in the right divine timing. But all I have to focus on is the reps and doing the things. But I want to say this because I used to be a carpenter and joiner by trade. And I remember when I was 16 years old, my dream was to be the qualified carpenter and joiner. But when I became the qualified carpenter and joiner, I was getting paid decent money at the time for my age. I resented the fact that I was a carpenter and joiner because I was watching other people walk around in suits to earn more money. It's like, you can reframe any thought in your mind. So if you're going towards your plumbing job right now, or you've got a plumbing company and you want an online business, which is what a lot of my DMs are about. It's like, I'm the plumber who wants an online business. I'm the carpenter who wants an online business, because that's what they see as the in thing right now. Just remember the day when you was actually like, you know, you were doing your apprenticeship, you started your apprenticeship, and all you wanted to be was a qualified plumber so you could earn more money to be able to do what you want to do. It's like when you start reframing things on that level of scale, you start to understand, like, it's not as bad as what you think.
And also everything is temporary, right? So if you're watching this and you're a plumber and you know for a fact, and I know that this is going to be true for you, that you're going to crush in an online business, might be the last 2 or 3 months of you doing plumbing. What is it about it that's so much cooler than running an online business? Well, you work for yourself. You can finish early and hang out with your partner. You know, they like whatever it is about that makes you happier, right?
Yeah. That
you get to meet new people, or like, oh, actually I get to see how people live, and I get to see different interior design that gives me so many ideas, you know, I'm not locked up at home. Like, just see what's the silver lining of that situation right now, because you, as it sounds, you're not a vibrational match to anything in life. If you're like constantly whiny and bitchy and just feel like, oh, I know what would have been better, because when you get there, and I promise you, because my life keeps going up every time, like I could sit here and tell you 500 things that I wish would have been better about this apartment, about what I do with my online business, and the challenges that I have that I didn't have a year or 2 or 5 years ago, right? So it's like, it's good problems to have, but so just like appreciate them for what they are.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, you know, it's just about reframing every area of your life and your thought process around the time frame it should happen in your life, because you don't know that didn't happen, because if that happened, then something else bad would happen over here. Like you can't conceptualize this stuff. There's been many times in my life where, even when I was in a work van years ago, and I'd be fuming because I got a flat tire, and I'm like, how have I got this flat tire? And I've fixed this flat tire, and all of a sudden I've missed this traffic jam. And there was a car accident up the road. You know, like I've avoided this big pile up on this main road because I was late. So many, there's a reason for everything. Yeah. And when you get to that granular level and you start to believe that, you get in a better mood if you believe that. Trust me.
Yeah.
So,
and it's also like, what is your primary question? I know Tony Robbins talks about it a lot, but most people ask questions like, what's wrong with me? What could have been done better? Okay, great questions to have, but your brain will find the answers. But what if you ask better questions? What if you ask a question, what's beautiful about my life right now? What's so much better? Why is life so easy? And your brain will find the answers.
Well, the reason why a lot of especially young men are inboxing me going about they're trying to go from a trade to an online business is essentially the thing. When you, I would say to a lot of you is like, change your thought process around what you're doing right now, elevate your vibration, elevate your energy around what you're doing. Do it with more consistency, with more love. Actually put your passion into it. Try and be the best you can at what you're doing right now. That elevation in energy will attract other things and attract the things that you want into your life anyway. And the natural progression towards the online business will happen. What will not happen is if you keep being a miserable bastard about being a plumber, or keep resenting the fact that you're a carpenter, which like I say was once a vision in your mind. It had to be, otherwise it wouldn't be your reality right now. It had to be a vision at some point. Yeah. Then, you know, you're just going to keep yourself away from this growth that you want. And that's what I feel holds a lot of young men back. They want to change too many steps in too quick a moment. And it's like, I had to go from carpenter in the UK to carpenter in Australia, to shop fitter in Australia, to shop fitting business, to sales guy, to content removal guy, to find my podcast.
Yeah.
So that was I didn't just land in Australia and think, oh, it's abundant here, I can just start a podcast. No, how do you fund that? There's steps to that.
Yeah.
And every part of your journey that we've spoke about so far, it's like there's little steps and little seeds that have opened up your mind to new environments that you can be in.
100%. And also it's like one of the exercises I do with my students at Higher Self Academy, it's called Skip the Middleman. So what is it about the podcast that you love the most? Talking to interesting people. So can you have that with what you're doing right now, right? If your goal is like, wow, like it would be so amazing for me to listen and be a part of very interesting conversations because I feel like that just gives me so much energy and I feel alive. Like, can you do it right now? Do you need to really wait to have a podcast? Can you reach out to different people, that maybe aren't as famous, but they're super interesting and you can just invite them on a podcast or a Zoom call? Like my partner, my fiance, Jacob, is so good at like that. When he finds someone he's like inspired by, he's like, hey, let's jump on a Zoom call and connect. And yeah, people usually say yes because we all crave like deep conversations.
Yeah, and like from my point of view is like having run a podcast that's been in 5-6 different countries around the world now and setting up in each location. It's like I was basically doing a podcast before I even started this, because from 2017 onwards I've had contentremoval.com and I've basically been looking after celebrities and brands for that entire period. And the amount of celebrities I've been on the phone with for like an hour and a half anyway, talking about what you might think might be content online, but is actually about the psychology of how the content online makes them feel and all the other stuff going on around their life that means of why they've invested so much time into that content. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So there's a lot.
Wow, that's very powerful. It's very true.
So basically, when it comes to content online, the only reason you believe it's a problem is because you've got some thought process in your head of what it means to you by having that online. So there's a lot more to the psychology of it than just removing the content. Because if you become peaceful with the fact of like you're your whole self, you perhaps don't even need to remove the content. Some people do, some people don't. But it's like I've had hours and hours long conversations with these people, and sometimes it's like, is that really a problem, or is the problem something else? Which has been a real learning curve. But essentially, I was doing the podcast before I ever recorded it. So it's been a whole learning process in that art as well. It's been
and I often find that whatever you end up doing in the first place, like me teaching biohacking, I was doing that to my friends, right? Like it's just your goal has to be a result of what you're already doing for free because you fucking love it, and you're already doing that, and then you maybe get paid for it. It's not like, hey, I want to get paid, I'm just, I'm a plumber. I don't give a shit about my life, but I just want to do X, Y, and Z, but nothing in my life reflects,
nothing's going to make you as much money or give you as much purpose in life as when you're doing something that's in full alignment with you. Like, obviously, look, I've never monetized the podcast yet, but eventually, I'll probably have a course that helps people break patterns in their life. I will probably do coaching in that aspect, and I'll probably do this, that, and the other when it's the right time and it evolves for me. I don't have to rush the process. It's going to come to me when it comes to me, how I'm meant to do it and how I'm meant to deliver it, the same way that you have. But what you find is when you're on this path and you're just enjoying it, which I am and which you are, everything just flows a lot better, doesn't it? Like it just the ideas come to you. You had to go into biohacking because you had to hack ways around your health because you weren't happy with your skin and you weren't happy with other parts of yourself that you wanted to fix and thought you could be better at. So you discovered biohacking, and then you went from biohacking to, I'm feeling so much better now, so I'm going to tell the girls to do this. And then from that, you've gone supplement line, and then you've gone into teaching biohacking because it's a natural evolution of self, right?
And also, the funny thing is what motivated... So I was always into Tony Robbins motivation, and it was really great in my 20s because I was like, fuck, like, other people are just lazy. They're not getting anything done with their life because clearly they're not listening to Tony Robbins, but it's so easy. You just have to do it. But then when I started having health issues, I realized that our biology is a big culprit of why we don't get shit done. And so it was a very humbling experience. I was like, there's no amount of Tony Robbins that can get me out of bed in the morning because my biology is compromised. And so that connection between biology and, you know, mindset was something that I was like, oh, I get it. Like, now I want to help women, and I want to see more women crush. I want to see more women thrive and make a lot of money and be financially independent. And a lot of them aren't because they live in their heads, or they're still trying to figure out their biology and they don't feel at their best.
I think the biology piece, you know, also works with men too. Like in essence, like, you know, if you're listening to all the mindset content, all the Frankie Lee podcast, all the, you know, everyone else's stuff, if you're listening to all the mindset, but you are eating shit food and that's low vibrational, that's bringing you into a low vibrational state, it doesn't matter how much of my content you consume or how much of anyone else's content you consume, you're not really going to move forward you may move forward 2 steps, but might go 1 step backwards because your consumption isn't in alignment with your mind. So what you say there, and how you got to line up the biology and the psychology is very powerful, because a lot of people have probably never heard that before. So just what is the best way then for people to, in a simple step process, to ascertain where they're not lined up, and then also then realign themselves?
I mean, just a simple question of how you're feeling right now. How many cups of coffee did you have? Did you just jump out of bed, or did you drag yourself out of bed? You know, do you have a beautiful gym routine that you go there and you feel like fucking amazing to sweat? Or you just feel like this is something you have to do because all the other people are doing it and you fucking hate it? Like, excuse my language, but like, this has to feel that like a full fuck yes, like a really just like a full body, life feels so good, I have so much energy, I'm so excited. Or you're like, I don't know. Like, if you're like this, then you're clearly, you know, time for an upgrade, right? Like, your birthright and your default should be thriving and should be a lot of energy. If it's not, time to fix it.
What were some of the key substances and things that you took out of your life straight away, or cut down, that really helped you make that first initial shift? Was it caffeine or?
No, I still drink caffeine. I think it's great. It's funny. I think it's almost going against everything the mainstream will tell you. And so when I was getting ready to write my book, I decided to stalk like the biggest fitness experts out there and see what they're doing. And I think no wonder I was feeling shit when I was following their advice. But obviously some people genetically have great metabolism and they can eat not whatever, but somewhat relatively healthy and have great results. That was never really me. I did my DNA test. I have tendency for obesity. So my diet's like, you know,
a crucial part
of and movement. And so I would say, like, you know, the mainstream would tell you, have a smoothie for breakfast in the morning, have an oat milk latte, just nibble like a bird, avoid fats, especially saturated fat, because it's going to make you fat. All of these things that are actually, like, the opposite is true. I'd say don't drink your calories. Like, try to chew as much as possible, because it's really important for the development of your, you know, for your breathing, and the way you breathe is going to really impact the way you, like, perform in life. You don't want to drink sugar first thing in the morning because it fucks up your glucose, and the glucose roller coaster is a really hard thing to get off, and it just crashes your energy and creates more cravings. And the more cravings and your dopamine is out of whack, you're going to find it really hard to avoid scrolling on Instagram, because you're going to need that dopamine hit. So it's just like a lot of things will get impacted. And yeah, eat enough protein, like good quality protein, and avoid seed oils. I think these would be like the main ones.
Yeah, I think the seed oils are a killer, because it doesn't matter where you go, everyone's cooking in them.
Yeah, and so, it's like when you go get a coffee, how do you drink your coffee?
I don't drink coffee.
Okay, what's your morning drink?
Well, I don't have any caffeine in the morning now, because I was addicted to energy drinks quite badly, and I was drinking like 4 to 5 cans of Monster a day. And about 80 odd days ago, I completely gave up. So I do have the occasional Diet Coke and Pepsi Max and stuff like that, maybe from about 10 a.m. onwards, but I don't hit any caffeine in the morning.
Got it. Well, so my go-to in the morning is like matcha with coconut milk sometimes. And if I went to a coffee shop and ordered that and they put like 5 like teaspoons of sugar, I would be like, wait, this tastes a little weird, right? Like you can taste sugar. But if you order an oat milk latte that has a lot of seed oils, you know, in the milk, which now it is, like a lot of these plant-based milks have a lot of seed oils, it's like you can taste it and be like, oh, I'm sorry, but there's a drop of seed oil. Like you can never tell, right? And so that's the scary thing about seed oils, that they are in your morning coffee. So you not only get a glucose spike, you drink seed oils and they're inflammatory. They create free radicals. They age you. Like they're the root cause of a lot of disease. And it's you know, as scary as it sounds, I don't want to scare you, but it's something that is scary because it's invisible and you can't really taste it. So you probably, we're exposed to seed oils left and right, including our morning coffee or morning matcha.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was in the morning coffee. But like you say, when you got all these plant-based products, especially being put everywhere now, and it's like a lot of these foods are labeled now to sell them as protein. You know what I mean? They're labeling protein, low fat, these kind of labels to sell you this food, and anything that's labeled protein, low fat, this that, and the other, invariably is shit.
Yep.
So it's like, you know, I think the best shape I've ever been in my life is when I was just eating like chicken, broccoli, and like sweet potato or roast potato. Like that's kind of worked for my body type, and it's about getting down to the simple one ingredient food, so you know where it's come from.
What we eat, you saw what we eat.
Yeah.
Very, very simple. And my body needs it. Like you don't really need to go too fancy. And the beautiful thing is, the simpler you go, your palate really changes. So then you don't crave
the shit. Yeah.
No, which is designed in a lab to make you keep eating it, right? So no wonder you're addicted.
Do you ever have any off days where you do crave a bit of fast food or anything like that?
I never have like a no. I don't ever have foods that are a no.
Yeah.
We travel so much, you know, we go to Italy, we go to Bali. I eat a lot of things that, you know, that's what I said at the beginning. I'm a biohacker and a bioslacker, because that 20% is just like, I just want to enjoy life and I just want to, you know, make the most of it. And I love a delicious meal and how a good dessert makes me feel. So yeah, I don't really have like a you know, a forbidden list, so to say.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it, is to have like, not when you forbid yourself from something, you kind of once you put that restriction
forbidden
around.
fruit. Oh my god, my personality is like, if I tell myself no milk, it's all I'm gonna think about.
Yeah. So I about 65 days into my journey with quitting energy drinks, I said to myself, if you want one, you can have one again, and then that way I stopped me wanting to have any.
Exactly.
Whereas before it was like restriction. You gotta get to 100 days like that. I was like, nah, ease off. I've never had one, but if I wanted to, I could. But I don't need it now because I've not put that restriction. I've not battered myself. I've not kind of done this and the other.
And it's funny how like a lot of these processed foods, like your baseline is changing, right? Like you started with one, but then one isn't enough, so you need to have a second one in the afternoon. Yeah. It's funny how, like, especially with caffeine, how fast it's growing. Once you get on the caffeine train or the glucose train of like sugar up, sugar down, like you crave more. It really is a drug.
These foods are taught to put your body in a cycle of like a doom cycle of craving and crashes, craving and crashes, craving and crashes.
So on my website, do you remember Good Will Hunting with Matt Damon?
Yeah.
Okay. So remember the scene when was it Robin Williams that, you know, he's a therapist, and Matt Damon had a very difficult childhood, and he says, you know, Robin Williams says to him, "It's not your fault." He's like, "Yeah, I get it." He's like, "No, it's not your fault." And he's like, "Don't fuck with me, man." And he's like, "No, it's not your fault." And then Matt Damon like breaks down because he's like, "Yeah, it's really not my fault that I am the way I am. I had a really difficult childhood." And I think this is very, very true for anyone listening right now. If you're struggling with your diet, if you're struggling with losing weight, if you're struggling with your energy, please trust me, it's not your fault. You're exposed to 168 chemicals a day on average. the food that you're eating isn't really real food, God knows what that is. You know, for me, definition of food is something I can digest and has nutrients. A lot of items that are on the shelf don't even tick the 2 boxes. They do more damage than good. So like, if you're struggling, it is really, really not your fault. It's how to navigate and remove all of the bullshit in your life. It's like literally like you do content removal. I do bullshit removal from your life. It's basically what is actual bullshit and how to remove the toxic people, toxic products, toxic food, and just finally just feel amazing.
I love it. And if there was one piece of golden wisdom before we get off this podcast, one piece of advice where you could leave an impactful point on everyone in this audience, but you can only leave one, what would it be?
I feel like honestly that would be it, that it's really not your fault. And the more you dive into biohacking, the more you dive into your soul, you see how life is meant to be easy. It's not meant to feel like you're pushing through. And if it does, I would love for you to invite you for a little upgrade and see what it's like. What if life was easy? You know, what if you could feel absolutely amazing and full of energy in your body, and how to remove everything else that isn't serving you, including toxic people and toxic food and, you know, toxic products that are all around us.
I love it. And that, guys, is Aggie Lau. And thank you so much for doing this today. I know you're flying out and you wedding dress shopping and everything that's going on in your life today. So appreciate this podcast, guys, because we've stuck it in, we've got it done. And guys, do me a solid favor, subscribe to it on all the platforms. If you're watching it on YouTube, drop a comment. If you're watching it or if you're listening to it on Apple or Spotify, drop a review or a star rating. I'd appreciate it. Share it with your friends. I appreciate all of you listening, and I hope this adds value to your life today. Much love. Guys, do me a solid favor, drop a comment below this video and let us know who you want on the podcast next.